One morning, I woke up to a knock on my door. It wasn't a friendly one. It was loud, heavy, and impatient. My heart sank as I opened it. There stood the landlord, arms crossed and face grim. "Kene, it's the third month now," he said, voice firm. "If you don't pay the rent by the weekend, you'll have to leave." I stood there frozen, my mind racing. The rent was overdue, my bills were piling up, and I had borrowed money from friends and family to stay afloat. Each call I got from them asking for their money felt like a weight on my chest. I had no idea how I got here. It all seemed to happen so fast. A few months earlier, life was so much better. I had just landed a few big projects as a freelance graphic designer. It was my side hustle, but it was bringing in good money, and I thought I had everything under control. With the money coming in, I decided to take a loan to upgrade my laptop and buy a better camera. It wasn't a big loan, and the bank made it sound simple, just pay back a small amount each month, they said. I figured it was an investment in my future. At first, things were fine. I was handling my monthly payments easily and even saving a little on the side. But then, out of nowhere, life hit me hard. My phone broke, and I had to replace it. That same month, my younger brother fell sick, and I needed to help with hospital bills. It wasn't long before I was running low on cash. Instead of cutting back on spending, I decided to borrow more. It was just a small amount from a microfinance bank. "I'll pay this off next month," I told myself. But next month never came. My spending didn't stop there. A friend was getting married, and I felt pressured to buy an expensive gift. Then I saw a discount on some software I had been wanting for a long time. I told myself, this is a good deal. I can't let it pass me by. Before I knew it, I had borrowed money from friends and family too. Every time I borrowed, I convinced myself it was temporary. I'll pay them all back soon, I thought. But instead of paying anything back, the debts kept growing. By the third month, I was drowning. I started avoiding calls and messages from the people I owed. Every notification on my phone made my stomach turn. It wasn't just about the money anymore, I felt like I was failing as a person. I had always been someone people could rely on, and now I was the one letting everyone down. When the landlord knocked that morning, it felt like the final straw. I spent the rest of the day sitting on my couch, staring at the wall. My mind was a mess. I kept replaying all the bad decisions I had made. How did it get this bad? I asked myself. The truth was, I had been ignoring the problem for too long. Borrowing more money to solve my problems only made things worse. I didn't have a plan, and that's why everything spiraled out of control. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about what the landlord said, "If you don't pay the rent by the weekend, you'll have to leave." The words felt like a drum beating in my head. I knew I had to do something. I couldn't keep running away from my debts. The next morning, I decided to face the problem head-on. I pulled out a notebook and wrote down every single debt I owed. The list was longer than I expected. I owed my cousin, my best friend, a microfinance bank, and the landlord. The total amount was shocking. I felt like crying, but at the same time, writing it all down gave me some clarity. For the first time, I could see the full picture of my situation. I realized something: I couldn't pay everything off at once. But I could start somewhere. I told myself, if I focus on one debt at a time, I can get through this. It wasn't going to be easy, but it was better than doing nothing. I started with my landlord. I went to him and explained my situation honestly. "I don't have the full amount," I said, "but here is what I can pay now." He wasn't happy, but he accepted the partial payment and gave me more time for the rest. Next, I contacted my cousin and my best friend. It wasn't easy admitting I couldn't pay them back immediately, but I promised them small, regular payments until I cleared the debt. To my surprise, they understood. They just wanted me to be honest. Finally, I tackled the microfinance bank. Their interest rate was high, and it scared me the most. I called them and asked if I could renegotiate the terms of my loan. They agreed to lower the monthly payments, but it meant the loan would take longer to pay off. I accepted because it gave me breathing room. I also made changes to how I spent money. I stopped buying things I didn't need. No more expensive gifts or unnecessary software. I made a simple budget and stuck to it. Every naira I earned had a purpose. Some went to debts, some to rent, and a little to basic living expenses. Slowly, things started to get better. The debts didn't disappear overnight, but with each payment, I felt a little lighter. Writing down my debts and having a plan gave me a sense of control. For the first time in months, I slept peacefully. That's how I learned the importance of something called debt management. It wasn't enough to just make payments and stop spending unnecessarily. I realized I needed to increase my income if I wanted to get out of debt faster. But how? My freelance work was inconsistent, and I didn't want to depend on it alone anymore. I sat down and thought about my skills. I knew graphic design, and I had a decent camera. That's when an idea struck me: why not try offering basic photography services for events? Weddings, birthdays, even corporate headshots. It wouldn't take up too much time, and I could earn extra cash on weekends. I created a simple flyer and started sharing it on social media. To my surprise, a friend reached out almost immediately. He needed a photographer for his small birthday party. It wasn't a big job, but it was a start. I did my best and made sure the pictures turned out great. He loved them and even referred me to another friend. With every new client, I set aside half the money for my debts and used the other half to keep things running. The extra income made a huge difference. I started making progress on my payments faster than I expected. At the same time, I learned more about budgeting. I began using an app to track my expenses. It was eye-opening to see where my money was going. Those little things I used to ignore, like buying snacks or paying for convenience, added up to a lot by the end of the month. Cutting back on those helped me save even more. There were still tough days, of course. Sometimes clients delayed payments, and I had to adjust my plans. But having a clear goal kept me motivated. I reminded myself every day why I was doing this: to be free from debt and to take control of my life again. Months went by, and one by one, my debt started to disappear. First, I paid off my cousin and best friend. The relief I felt was incredible. Then I focused on clearing the microfinance loan. It took longer, but when I finally made the last payment, I couldn't stop smiling. The landlord was the last person on my list. By the time I paid him off, I felt like a new person. Looking back, I realized the most important lesson wasn't just about paying off debts. It was about understanding how I got there in the first place. I had been careless with my money and too quick to borrow without thinking about the consequences. I promised myself I would never make those mistakes again. Today, I live differently. I save a portion of every income one gets, no matter how small. I only borrow when it's absolutely necessary, and I always have a plan to pay it back. Most importantly, I've learned to say no to unnecessary expenses, to pressure from others, and even to myself when I'm tempted to overspend. Debt management isn't just about clearing what you owe. It's about managing your life so you don't fall into the same trap again. That's what I tell anyone who asks about my story. If I could do it, anyone can.